Released in 2019, Tigers Are Not Afraid is a horror fairy tale that follows 5 children being pursued and haunted by a cartel and the ghosts of the people lost in the local drug war. This movie was made and originally released in Mexico in 2017. It eventually got a wider release after continuing to show up at film festivals, reaching a wide release in the US 2 years after its original release date. This movie is written and directed by Issa Lopez, who has worked as a writer on most projects and just recently became the head creator for the newest season of True Detective. The film starts with Estrella, played by Paola Lara, a 10-year-old girl who's given 3 wishes when her school is collaterally attacked in cartel violence. When the school is shut down for the foreseeable future, she returns home to find her mother gone. After a couple days of waiting, she uses a wish to bring her mother back. She's then haunted by visions of figures and a woman wrapped in plastic. Too scared to stay home, she joins a small group of orphaned boys on the street, led by the stubborn Shine. To prove her worth, she's tasked with killing a local cartel member. Upon finding his already dead body in his home, she takes his phone and takes responsibility for his death and brings down the ire of the rest of the cartel on them. Now, I watched this movie earlier this year, and it did stick with me. It is presented very much so as a story told from the perspective of a child with a wild imagination in an awful situation. It uses fairy tale elements to blend reality and fantasy until it's so intertwined that you believe the ghosts could very much be real. When Estrella wishes for her mom back, she starts to see the ghosts of other people all around her in her day-to-day life. We as an audience also see a lot of fantastical imagery throughout, like a flowing stream of blood that follows Estrella wherever she goes, and it's also used to indicate when the ghosts are nearby. I really enjoyed the way this movie was shot. I'm fairly certain that the entire movie is shot on a handheld camera. While I'm not the biggest fan of handheld, I do think it works here. Most of the movie is shot at eye level with the children. I think this, along with the shakiness and movement of the handheld camera, does a really good job of immersing you into the dynamic between all the kids. Lopez does a really good job of making the children believable in their dialogue and properly conveying their personalities. Interestingly, none of the children were actors before this movie. Lopez also made the creative decision to not give the child actors an actual script as to get their genuine reactions to what is happening in each scene, but they were also trained in an improvisational workshop beforehand to prepare for this kind of acting, and this does end up working. I was surprised by how good the kids are in this movie. They all feel genuine in their acting, especially Paola Lara and Juan Ramon Lopez as Shine. This movie is technically a horror movie. There is scary imagery and themes that align with it being a horror movie, but I don't think it's fair to just call it that. I think it's more in line with a tragic fairy tale. The subject matter of this movie is dark. Mild spoilers, but the woman wrapped in plastic that keeps appearing to Estrella is her mother. She is wrapped in plastic because that is how her body was disposed of by the cartel. The rest of these kids in the movie also lost their families in some way. It's an incredibly tragic and dark subject matter that is balanced out by being told from a somewhat naive and childlike perspective. The horror imagery adds a fantastical element, softening the blow of the depressing reality of the situation. This movie is also tackling basically grief and how to grieve for someone you've lost. Horror does a good job of capturing that type of emotion and kind of trying to explain it in its own way, but it is also done really well here in general. I feel like there is a lot of allegorical writing in this movie, and I think most of it does come through, and you do end up really feeling for the main characters in this. Now, one of the reasons that the cartel member is killed is because he was planning on turning over video evidence of his boss killing someone, which is on his phone. When this is stolen, the cartel members need to track the kids down no matter what. These kids don't realize the gravity of the situation, and they put themselves in much more danger than they realize, even though they know that dying is a possibility. Now, like I said, this is a tragic story, so it is sad, but there is an element of cushiness to the sadness. The kids are handled with a lot of compassion and warmth, and this translates to the way death is handled in this movie. There's the movie rule of certain spirits not being able to move on until someone or something is fixed in their previous life. There's this casual knowingness with death here. It's a sort of contentment that is more reassuring than I can explain it. There's this feeling of closure when it comes to death, in this movie that you don't really get in real life, and I think that's one reason that this story is as effective as it is. I really like the story here, and I think the relationships between the kids are developed really well. You really enjoy the moments where they are able to be children again and play, and there's an entire sequence kind of towards the middle of the movie where they do go to a school that's abandoned, and they just kind of have fun for a while and they act like kids. And after seeing them in all these other situations, it's cathartic to see. It feels fun, and there's this wonderment of childhood that is still present in them despite their situation. I think Lopez is a very solid writer and director. Her approach for capturing the child actors' performances was very well done, so her vision comes through here. I don't really have much bad to say about this movie. It is a short movie, it's under 90 minutes, and I felt like some things could have been explored a little bit more by the time it was over. I felt like the adults slash villains weren't as well written as the kids, and it's obvious that the focus wasn't on them, but I still wanted a little bit more. Some things were a little hard to believe when they did happen, but I also think that's the point here. Famous writer and director Guillermo del Toro is also a big proponent for this movie and helped promote it when it was getting its wider release. I'm a big fan of his and always consider his recommendations seriously. I really like Lopez's approach to this story, and I look forward to seeing more of her work. There is a weirdly heartfelt vulnerability in this movie that I would recommend for anyone interested in the premise. The kids here are great, and they hold the heart of this movie very, very well, especially Paola. I am looking forward to see her in future projects if she's continuing to be an actor. Same with Juan Ramon Lopez. I would like to see him in something else too. I really liked the relationship that was developed between those two in the story, and how this friendship kind of blossoms from this point of Shine really not liking her at first and then coming around as she's around them more and she kind of proves her worth. There is the aspect of like kids living on the street that does work really well here, and their relationships are very fun to see. It is a somewhat upsetting movie, so I think that if you are worried about seeing violence against children, it does contain that here. It's not super explicit, but it is still disturbing. I would definitely recommend this movie if the premise does interest you. I do believe that it's still available to stream on Shudder. I would say go check it out. And I'm going to be rating Tigers Are Not Afraid a B-. This was a bit of a hidden gem for me this year, so I want to know what everybody else thought about this movie. If they've seen it already, let me know, and I will be back with another video.